All right, so let's talk about something really important. If you've ever thought about going into business with someone, you've probably asked yourself, right? At what point does it become, official? When are you legally partners? It's a huge question, and the answer, well, it's not always what you'd think. So today, we're going to break it all down and make it crystal clear step by step. So here's the game plan. We're going to start with the actual legal definition. Then we'll pull apart each essential component. We'll talk about who can be a partner, the agreement you need, the business itself, and finally, we'll wrap up with the big one, the one true test that ultimately decides if you've actually got a partnership on your hands. Okay, picture this. You and a buddy have this amazing idea. You're all fired up, ready to get started, but hang on a second. Before you dive in head first, you really need to understand where the legal lines are drawn. Because, just working together and splitting the cash, that might not be enough. The law could see it completely differently. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. This whole thing, this entire concept of partnership, it all comes down to one single definition. It's right there in Section 4 of the Indian Partnership Act of 1932. This is our foundation for everything we're about to discuss. And here it is. Now, at first glance, it looks pretty straightforward, right? But don't let that fool you. This one sentence is absolutely loaded with meaning. It's got 5, let's call them key ingredients, and you need every single one of them to be there. If you're missing even one, nope. In the eyes of the law, it's not a partnership. Simple as that. So let's pull that definition apart. Think of it like 5 essential building blocks. First, you've got an association of people. Then you need an agreement. Third, there has to be an actual business. Fourth, a plan to share the profits. And finally, this really important concept called mutual agency. We're going to look at each of these one by one. Okay, first up, the people. Who is actually allowed to form a legal partnership? Turns out the law is pretty specific about this. All right, this is the most basic part. You can't be a partner with yourself, so obviously you need at least 2 people. But here's the critical bit. Those people have to be legally able to enter into a contract. The law has to recognize them as being capable of making that kind of serious agreement. Now, this is where it gets interesting. An individual person, yep, they can be a partner. But get this, another partnership firm can't be a partner. And you might be asking, why is that? Well, it's because the law doesn't see the firm itself as its own separate legal person. It's just a name for the group of partners. Same kind of logic applies to minors. They can't be a full-blown partner with all the responsibilities, but they can be brought in just to get a share of the profits. So we know the minimum is 2. But is there a maximum? Well, fun fact, the Partnership Act itself is actually silent on this. But the Companies Act from 2013 comes in and sets a hard limit. The ceiling is 50 partners. That's it. All right, moving on to our second element. This one is the bedrock, the very foundation of every single partnership, the agreement. And let me be clear, this is absolutely non-negotiable. The biggest thing to get here is that partnerships are created on purpose. You don't just stumble into one. You can't become a partner by accident or just because you're related to someone or because you inherited a business together. No, it has to be a conscious, deliberate choice, spelled out in a voluntary agreement that everyone involved agrees to. Now, this agreement, it can look a few different ways. It could just be a conversation, a spoken agreement. It can even be implied, just based on how you all consistently act over time. But let's be real. To avoid a world of headaches and arguments down the line, putting it all down in writing in a formal document, what's called a partnership deed, that is always the smartest way to go. Okay, so we've got the people and the agreement. Now let's talk about the why. What's the whole point of this venture? The law is super specific here. To be a partnership, you have to be running an actual business, and its number one goal must be to make a profit. Now, business is a pretty broad term. It covers basically any trade, occupation, profession, you name it. But the key is the motive. The law calls it the acquisition of gains, which is just a fancy way of saying to make a profit. So let's say you and a friend co-own a house and you just split the rent money. That's not a partnership. Or if you're running a charity club together, also not a partnership. Why? Because the main goal isn't profit. And this next part busts a really common myth. You absolutely 100% have to agree to share the profits. That's a deal breaker. But, and this might surprise you, you don't actually have to agree to share the losses. It's totally legal to have an agreement where, say, one partner agrees to take on all the financial risk if things go south. So let's make this super practical. Again, 2 people co-owning a property and just splitting the rent?
not partners. But two people actively buying and selling cotton together with a specific intent to make a profit and then split it? Yes, that's a partnership. And of course, a nonprofit or a charity by its very nature, it can't be one.
Okay, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this is the most important one. This is what the courts look to as the true test of a partnership. It's the one thing that really, truly separates a real partnership from just, any other project you might do with someone. Remember that legal definition we started with? Let's look at the very last part of it again. Carried on by all or any of them acting for all. That little phrase, that is the absolute core principle of partnership law. It has a name, mutual agency. So what on earth does that mean? In simple terms, it means every partner can act on behalf of all the others. One person's action in the business becomes the whole firm's action. If one partner signs a contract, it's like the entire firm signed it. They can legally tie the whole partnership to a deal. And at the same time, they're tied to any deals their partners make. Here's a great way to think about it. Every partner is wearing two hats at the same time. With one hat on, they're an agent. Their actions can bind everybody else. With the other hat on, they're a principal. They are bound by what everybody else does. It's a two-way street of responsibility. And this, right here, is the ultimate test. If you don't have this, you can share profits all day long, but you do not have a legal partnership. And hey, this isn't just some dusty idea from a law book. The Supreme Court of India has said it loud and clear. This principle of mutual agency is an absolutely essential condition. It's a must-have. Even if one partner has exclusive control, as long as they are acting for all, the partnership exists. All right, so we've taken it all apart. Now let's put those 5 building blocks back together one last time to see the whole picture of what makes a legal partnership. So, to recap, a legal partnership requires all 5 of these things to be present at the same time. You need the right number of people, a voluntary agreement, a profit-seeking business, a pact to share those profits, and, most importantly, that mutual agency between all the partners. So now, think back to that business idea you had with your friend. Does it check all 5 of those boxes? This legal framework is your essential guide. And understanding this stuff isn't just academic. It's how you build your business on a foundation that's solid, secure, and legally sound right from day one.